Many people try to portray hell and Christianity's exclusivity as unjust because if a non-Christian lives a life spent following the moral law often, he's still damned. Spends a long life of not lying often, stealing only a few times as a kid of something of very little value, and not murdering. They've lived a good life, right? And yet they're still going to hell. Well, the reason non-Christians often follow many of God's moral laws, again, not stealing, not lying, not murdering, honoring their parents, it isn't because that's their intent. They're not intentionally following the Ten Commandments. Like, that's not at the forefront of their mind. It's because the God that they worship, whether it's their self in a sense or whatever, their God has a similar set of moral commandments. Their God also commands, do not murder, do not lie, and so have you. And see, the character named Mr. Virtue in C.S. Lewis's book called The Pilgrim's Regress is a perfect illustration of what I'm saying here. Because he walks 30 miles a day, not because it's the landlord's rule, but because it's his. In Pilgrim's Regress, you have the main character named John, who comes from a land ruled by the landlord, which obviously represents the Lord. And he meets a man by the name of Mr. Virtue, and one of their conversations goes like this. Virtue says, the great thing is to do one's 30 miles a day. That's walking 30 miles a day, as mentioned earlier. Then John says, why? And continues, Virtue says, because that is the rule. Oh, and ho ho, said John. So you do believe in the landlord after all, even though earlier in the text Virtue said he did not believe in him. Then Virtue responds to this saying, not at all. I didn't say that it's the landlord's rule. Whose is it then? It's my own rule. I made it myself. See, he's following the landlord's rules out of coincidence, not intention. Same thing when a non-believer follows God's moral law. Another thing with trying to say non-believers who have lived a good life shouldn't go to hell. You see, Christians are no better than non-Christians. So if people who worship and trust the God of salvation have repented of their sins and are therefore born again, i.e., spiritually transformed and made alive, if such people don't deserve heaven and cannot be said to have lived a good life, then it's the same for non-Christians. Can't say for Christians, can't say for non-Christians. Because every single mere human has broken the moral law. Just look at Romans 3:10 to 12 and verse 23. Get there. You see, man's standards say that at least some people are good or have lived good lives. But no one is good except God alone, according to God himself. Mark 10, second part of 18. You see, all have sinned and fallen short. Romans 3:23. And no one can be good and fallen. That's an oxymoron. The only one who has lived a good life is the only one who can bring us salvation. You see, having both true divinity and true perfect humanity, Jesus is the sinless, spotless lamb that was sacrificed on our behalf so that despite our unmeasurable sinfulness, we can receive God's full grace and become completely freed from sin in every way, from its punishment, from its permanent effects, and from its power over us.